Mom is still inside.
In the midst of a sudden fire at my son's family home, my 7-year-old grandson's tearful cry shocked me. His mother had disappeared without a trace 2 years ago, leaving no contact with the family. Ultimately, there were no eyewitness accounts, and the truth remained shrouded in darkness. But didn't Mom leave? I was puzzled over my grandson's words. However, my surprise grew when the firefighters emerged from the flames, carrying something. At 60 years old, having lost my husband, I'd been living alone for the past 2 years. It might seem lonely, but I found contentment in my solitude. The reason? My son's family lived nearby. Ryan, my only son, married Amy, who is 2 years younger, and they were blessed with a child afterward. When I see my son happily living with his beautiful wife, who looks like a model, and their adorable son Oliver, I also feel happy. I believed this routine would continue indefinitely, but then something felt off. One day, during a visit to my son's house, I sensed it.
Hey, Amy, Mom's here. Hurry up and bring some tea.
Ha! You don't need to fuss so much. Ryan, with an oddly triumphant expression, said,
By coddling her like that, she'll end up being an inconsiderate woman. I'm the only one crazy enough to marry her, so I need to make her understand.
His words left me frowning. Usually, my son and daughter-in-law get along well, but on this day, he seemed to be in a bad mood and was unusually confrontational with Amy. Despite the hurtful words, she smiled and brought the tea, leaving me feeling uncomfortable. Hey, isn't that a bit harsh? I couldn't let it slide and turned to my son. Amy, always gentle, brushed it off, but his attitude bothered me. As Ryan's mother, I felt compelled to correct him. However, he retorted,
What does it have to do with Mom? Forget it, I'm not feeling well.
To my surprise, he sulked like a child and retreated to the bedroom. Even Oliver, my grandson, looked anxious in this tense atmosphere.
Daddy, sometimes it's like this.
It wasn't like this before. Has something happened recently? His sad voice tugged at my heart as I glanced at Amy. She smiled softly and replied,
He's been stressed due to work. Please don't worry.
Though I didn't press further, I assured her, if anything comes up, feel free to talk to me. Ultimately, I left my son's house without uncovering the cause of his ill temper. The unsettling atmosphere caught my attention, but I hesitated to meddle too much in my son's marital issues. However, a few weeks later, I found myself witnessing another peculiar scene. Hi, Amy, Oliver. Shopping together? I spotted them at the local supermarket by chance. When they turned to my greeting, their expressions seemed oddly subdued. You don't seem well. Is something wrong? Memories of my recent visit to my son's house flashed through my mind. Yet, Amy once again put on a smile and replied calmly,
It's nothing. Just a bit tired.
But the unease persisted. Suspecting her facade, I glanced into their shopping cart and noticed an abundance of bandages and disinfectants. What's this? Did someone get injured? Oliver isn't into sports, right? Before Amy could answer, my son appeared, having apparently returned from the restroom.
Hey, Mom, are you here too? Sorry, but we're in a hurry. See you later.
Without proper greetings, Ryan hurriedly led them to the checkout. His forceful demeanor, Amy and Oliver's anxious vibes, and the contents of the cart, bandages and disinfectants, all added up. I need to have a proper conversation about this. Finally feeling that something was amiss, I watched them walk away, silently resolving to take action. A few days later, I visited my son's house once more. However, it seemed my actions were already too late. Hello. Wait, where's Amy?
Actually, she left. No contact whatsoever.
His regretful words left me speechless. Upon hearing the story, it turned out that right after that day at the supermarket, she vanished without a word. Her parents had passed away early, and there was no way to reach her.
We've already consulted the police, but there are no eyewitness accounts.
Ryan looked utterly defeated, and Oliver huddled in the corner of the room. I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me. While I had sensed something was off, I never imagined it would escalate to this. But wallowing in despair wouldn't help. I'll search for her too. Amy must be okay. Let's pray for her safety. Encouragingly, I decided to find her, hoping to restore my son and daughter-in-law's happiness. Despite my wishes, no useful information surfaced. The situation remained stagnant. Amidst all this, Ryan continued to work stoically, but Oliver seemed deeply affected, withdrawing into himself. It's no wonder, considering he lost his precious mother at such a young age. Where could she have gone, leaving behind such an adorable child? Despite my frustration, I kept a watchful eye on the remaining two. And then, 2 years after Amy's disappearance, a sudden turn of events shook everything. It happened one day while I was out shopping. As I stepped out of the supermarket, I noticed a commotion around me. People were murmuring unsettling phrases like "there's a fire." To confirm their words, a fire truck blared its siren as it sped down the adjacent road. And where it was headed, I felt that ominous premonition. Wait, isn't that the direction of Ryan's house? Since Ryan hadn't returned from work yet, the only one at home would be 7-year-old Oliver. Worried for my precious grandson, I dashed toward their house. I hoped it was all a misunderstanding, but unfortunately, my gut feelings were often accurate. Oh no. Oliver. The place where my son's house should have stood was engulfed in towering flames. Amidst the crowd, I pushed forward, desperate to reach the house. The situation was unclear, but there was a chance Oliver might still be inside. And then,
Grandma.
I turned at the familiar voice and saw my grandson being carried by a firefighter. It seemed the quick response had saved his life. Relieved to see Oliver safe, I was taken aback when he cried out toward the raging flames.
Mom is still inside.
His unexpected confession left my eyes wide, alternating between shock and disbelief. What are you saying? Mom left 2 years ago, didn't she?
No, that's Dad's lie. Mom is still there. We have to help her.
Confused, I held my grandson's hand. Despite the chaos, Oliver's distress seemed genuine. And soon enough, his words were proven true. Mom? Really? Upon hearing Oliver's words, the firefighters entered the house and emerged with Amy, blackened but alive. Beside me, who couldn't understand at all what was happening, my grandson wept inconsolably, and his words hit me like a punch to the gut.
Dad is to blame for everything.
The shocking truth that emerged afterward left me breathless. The next day, alone at home, I waited quietly for someone. Since then, the story I heard from Oliver was too cruel, something I could hardly accept. However, precisely because of that, with a strong determination in my heart, I took a certain action to verify the truth with my own eyes. And a few minutes later, the doorbell finally rang.
Mom, where's Amy? Where's my wife?
Ryan, sweaty and out of breath, stood before me as he barged into the house, frantically searching for his wife. Watching him, a mix of sadness and resolve, I called his name. I told you Amy was waiting based on an email, but that was a lie. I figured you'd come here.
Huh? Why would you? Wait, where is she? Could it be a fire?
Ryan's face turned pale, and I gazed at him in silence. Since hearing about the fire at his home, my son hadn't come to pick up his son, Oliver, and Amy remained missing. I had a general idea of the reason, but without hearing it from my son's own mouth, we couldn't move forward. She's at the hospital with Oliver. She's badly injured, but her life was saved. However, there's something we need to discuss first, right?
It's not a big deal.
So, Amy's disappearance was a lie, I stated. My son flinched, as my mind raced back to the conversation I'd had with Oliver after the fire. According to Oliver, the story of Amy leaving 2 years ago was all Ryan's fabrication. In reality, Amy had been confined to a hidden room within the house, forbidden to leave. He'd told the neighbors the same lie about her disappearance, and naturally, no missing person report had been filed with the police. Oliver, too, had been threatened not to seek help, fearing that both he and Amy would suffer worse consequences if he spoke up. And unbelievably, Ryan had mistreated Amy, withholding food and even raising his hand against her. The situation was far worse than I'd imagined. Oliver, feeling sorry for the exhausted Amy, attempted to cook for his mother. However, a nearby kitchen paper towel caught fire from the gas flame, leading to the recent house fire and exposing the truth. Why would you keep her confined for 2 years like that? I asked Ryan, my voice trembling as I considered Amy's emotional state. How terrifying it must have been for her, alone in a dark room, having suffered mistreatment from her husband, and unable to seek help due to the false belief that she was missing. However, in response to my inquiry, my son's face flushed red with anger.
It's all her fault. She flirted with other men.
His unexpected words left me wide-eyed, but he paid no attention and angrily slammed his hand on the table. As I listened, it became clear that Ryan's jealousy had played a significant role in Amy's ordeal. For instance, even if Amy merely conversed with male colleagues at work or cashiers, Ryan couldn't tolerate it. He frequently resorted to violence, and the large quantities of bandages and disinfectants she purchased were likely for treating her injuries.
So I had her quit her job, and I even made sure she went shopping with me. But still.
Then, during a family outing, Amy's beauty inadvertently led to a pivotal event. As they walked through town, a man approached her, showing interest. Although Amy was blameless, Ryan erupted in anger. Like the first time I sensed something was wrong, he grew cold toward Amy and eventually confined her at home. She pleaded to be let out, but he continued the mistreatment, justifying it as discipline. Ryan's defense?
I'm just protecting my wife. She's the one who flirts with other men.
His strained voice echoed, leaving me speechless. While I understood the concern over Amy's attractiveness, it didn't excuse inhumane actions. Regardless of love's influence, the fault lay squarely with Ryan, not his wife. Facing my drastically changed son, I grappled with a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. Taking a step closer. Even so, you won't see her again.
Why not? She's alive, isn't she?
She won't see you because I'm turning you over to the police. I've recorded this conversation. There's no escape, so prepare yourself. My words left Ryan wide-eyed. The fire department's diligent efforts had partially saved the house, including the room where Amy had been confined. Testimonies from the firefighters who rescued her and Oliver's account had prompted the police to investigate Ryan. With ample evidence, this recording would likely seal his fate.
But I just love Amy. What's wrong with that?
Perhaps realizing what lay ahead, Ryan collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I can't believe that my son, whom my late husband and I raised, would do something like this. But he's already an adult. No matter how much he cries like a child, he can't undo what he's done. Ryan's only option now is to atone for his sins and live a better life. And as a mother, it's my responsibility to guide him toward the right path. Then all the more reason you should pay for your actions. I was unable to contain my frustration. Ryan looked up, defeated, and I met his gaze. Let's go to the police together. It's the only path left for you, I told him. Finally, he nodded in resignation, and we headed to the police station. Afterward, with sufficient evidence, Ryan was arrested. Naturally, he and Amy divorced, and she received a $20,000 settlement. With a long sentence ahead and a restraining order preventing him from approaching his ex-wife and child, Ryan would never see them again. I cut ties with Ryan as well, and now, Amy, Oliver, and I have moved to a different town, starting a new life together. Amy, who had been visiting the hospital frequently, is now on the road to recovery. We hope for a peaceful life ahead, cherishing our newfound happiness as a family.
How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Mom said to leave. Can you let us stay just for tonight?
Late at night, my 9-year-old grandson suddenly visited us. I rushed to open the door, and found him in bare feet, with blood oozing from his toes. Moreover, he was tightly holding the hand of his 4-year-old sister, tears streaming down her face. Did you two really walk here all by yourselves? They nodded, and I hurriedly let them into the house. However, when my husband woke up, he was furious.
Absolutely not.
The terrifying expression on his face made the grandchildren burst into tears, leaving me bewildered. They should have been allowed to stay for just one night. After that, I couldn't believe my eyes at the action my husband took. I'm Margaret, a 63-year-old homemaker living with my husband Patrick, who is 2 years older. He worked as a high school teacher until he retired at 60. Our 2 children were married and independent. Our daughter Laura lived in a nearby apartment, and our son Richard lived in the neighboring town. Victoria, the wife of our eldest son, is stunningly beautiful with translucent white skin, and even women would flutter if she looked at them with those big eyes. she was an ideal daughter-in-law as long as she remained silent. However, she had an incredibly bad mouth.
Everyone wonders why a woman of my caliber would marry a man like him.
Huh? Are you saying Richard isn't up to your standard?
Well, he works for a top-tier company and earns a decent income, but let's be honest, he's not that good-looking. But I'm not that picky, so he's lucky, I guess.
I couldn't help but feel very angry when she spoke ill of my own son. Who do you think you are? I wanted to say, but I held my tongue because I didn't want to argue. However, my husband couldn't stay silent.
Richard sure married quite an impressive wife, didn't he?
Despite the sarcastic remark, Victoria seemed unfazed and even smirked dismissively. Richard, in response, could only manage a wry smile.
Victoria is too good for me.
Seeing this, I imagined that my kind-hearted son must be facing some challenges in his marriage. However, despite their differences, they had a child together. Daniel, our first grandchild, strongly resembled his mother with a remarkably beautiful face. Personality-wise, he took after Richard, being very kind, a perfect blend of his parents' best qualities. I looked forward to Richard occasionally bringing Daniel over to our house. Victoria rarely visited, but I thought it might be the best for both of us. Then, we also welcomed a granddaughter, Emily, born 5 years after Daniel. She was an adorable girl with fair skin, chubby cheeks, and round eyes. However, when I visited my son's home to celebrate her birth, Victoria disdainfully glared at the newborn.
Daniel takes after me and is beautiful, but why is this one so chubby and ugly? Who does she even resemble? She's not cute at all.
You're a mother, don't say such a thing. She's perfectly cute just as she is.
I can say whatever I want to my own child. Are you trying to start trouble with me? Well, I won't lose to an old hag like you.
As my husband heard this exchange beside me, his expression quickly changed. I could tell he was about to shout in my defense, so I hurriedly intervened. Instead, it was our son who raised his voice in anger.
Victoria, enough. Mom and Dad came here to celebrate. There's a limit to how rude you can be.
Oh, how unusual for you to stand up to me. Quite interesting.
She glared sharply at Richard, seeming ready to strike, so I quickly relented. I'm sorry. Victoria, you've just given birth and it's a stressful time. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize, please forgive me.
Exactly. You shouldn't have said anything. You could have just sent a money gift instead of coming all the way here.
Victoria's demeanor was consistently lacking in manners, but I couldn't say anything further. Because of incidents like these, we grew distant afterward. However, despite this, Richard continued to bring Daniel and Emily over to us regularly. It made us happy to see our adorable grandchildren, but there were still some concerns on my mind. Daniel was bright and talkative, but Emily, even at the ages of 3 and 4, showed hardly any signs of speaking. Furthermore, her fair skin had turned extremely dark from sunburn, and her hands were rough and dry. When I asked Richard about it,
Victoria said Emily loved playing in the garden.
That said, the condition of our granddaughter's skin was extremely concerning. One day, our family was struck by tragedy. My son Richard suddenly passed away. He fell from the stairs of a pedestrian bridge during his commute and was transported by ambulance. After being transported to the hospital, he received intensive treatment, but unfortunately, he didn't make it. I was in such shock that I couldn't even stand up. Richard, you poor thing. It must have been painful.
Daddy, Daddy. What's wrong? Wake up. Wake up.
Daniel cried uncontrollably, while Emily remained expressionless, biting her lip. Victoria, without shedding a tear, continued to fiddle with her phone. Looking back now, it was indeed a peculiar scene, but at that moment, I was overwhelmed with grief and unable to pay attention to anything else. My husband received our son's old and worn-out bag from the paramedics, found beneath the pedestrian bridge. It was a bag I had bought for him when he started working. He's been saving and working hard for the family. Thinking this made everything even harder to bear. The wake and funeral were mainly organized by our daughter's husband and were carried out smoothly. I spent the time in a daze at home. It was the day after the funeral. In the middle of the night, the intercom rang. Wondering what was happening, I looked at the camera and saw Daniel's face, biting his lips. I hurriedly opened the door and let him in. Holding back his tears, Daniel managed to speak in a strained voice.
Mom told us to leave. Can you let us stay just for tonight?
My grandson was barefoot, and there was blood oozing from his toes. Did you two walk here all by yourselves? The grandchildren nodded, but it was a 10-minute drive from the neighboring town. While 9-year-old Daniel might manage to walk, Emily was only 4 years old. Besides, it was the middle of the night. They must have been terrified. When I let them into the living room, my husband had also awakened, so I consulted him about Daniel's request to stay just for the night.
Grandpa, we'll leave tomorrow, please.
Absolutely not.
Upon seeing my husband's furrowed brow and fearful expression, the grandchildren burst into tears, and I was wide-eyed with surprise. Can't we at least let them stay for one night? I began to plead, but my husband hugged the grandchildren tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. Even during our son's funeral, he held back tears. We've been married for 30 years, yet this was the first time I had seen my husband cry like this.
Don't say just for today. Stay here forever. Poor you.
I realized his feelings with those words, and I couldn't stop crying. Later, I asked the grandchildren what had happened, and what they shared was shocking. Victoria, who was supposed to be a homemaker, was often out during the day, leaving the children at home alone. Even when she was home, she would frequently scold and roughly push Emily around for various reasons. As a result, whenever Emily cried, Victoria would shout angrily,
Shut up. Be quiet. You're annoying.
Over time, Emily learned to cry silently without making a sound. Daniel reportedly got scolded too when he tried to defend his younger sister because he felt sorry for Emily. While he could escape from his mother's behavior by going to school, Emily, who wasn't allowed to attend kindergarten, didn't have that option. Apparently, while her mother was around, Emily would go outside to weed the garden every day. This was her way to avoid being scolded and perhaps earn some praise from Victoria. This explains why her skin was deeply tanned and her hands were rough. Emily's inability to speak might stem from a fear of being scolded. Thinking about this filled me with a sense of helplessness. That evening, Victoria apparently told them that guests were coming and ordered them to go outside. Daniel managed to put on his shoes, but Emily couldn't make it in time and was left barefoot. Victoria quickly locked the front door behind them, so Daniel then put his shoes on Emily's feet and held her hand as they walked to our house to seek help. What a terrible thing to do. Unbelievable. I tried calling my daughter-in-law several times, but couldn't reach her. It was late at night, so I decided to sleep with my grandchildren that night. However, early in the morning, Daniel woke me up.
Grandma, I'm sorry for waking you up. Emily said she saw Dad in her dream.
Huh? Did she? And then?
Dad told Emily to look inside the bag.
I was taken aback by what he said, but looking at Daniel's serious expression, I started to wonder if there was something more to it. Then I woke up my husband and told him what Daniel had said. Still groggy, my husband was skeptical at first, but when he checked our son's bag, he exclaimed in surprise.
No way. This is outrageous.
I can't forgive this. Filled with anger, we decided to take action. Afterward, we quickly called our eldest daughter, Laura, who lives nearby, and asked her to come to our home to take care of the grandchildren. Meanwhile, my husband and I rushed to our son's house and rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one answered. But we continued to ring the doorbell persistently. My daughter-in-law finally appeared in her pajamas, with the collar open and looking disheveled.
Geez, so noisy. Who the hell is it?
At that moment, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a young man with brown hair crossing in the back of the room, completely naked. I knew it. However, as soon as my daughter-in-law realized it was us, she widened her eyes and quickly shut the door.
It's so rude of you to come here suddenly. Go home.
From behind the door, my daughter-in-law shouted aggressively. We have something urgent to discuss. Please open the door.
I said I can't open it right now.
I reluctantly opened the door with the key I found in my son's bag, and inside, the young man from earlier exclaimed, "Oh no! Run!" He hurriedly dressed and fled from the house. At the entrance, she stood defiantly, glaring at me and my husband without a trace of remorse.
What the heck are you doing here?
Before anything else, are you already cheating on your husband the day after he passed away?
Don't be ridiculous. Oh, he's just a gas repairman.
Huh, so gas repairmen these days work without clothes on? Victoria noticed my sarcasm and clicked her tongue in annoyance. She may have a beautiful face, but her ugly character shows through in her expression.
Richard is gone now, and I'm done with you both. You have no right to say anything. Just leave.
At that moment, my husband, his face flushed red with anger, deliberately asked her,
I can't see the grandchildren? Where are they?
And with that, my husband went to check something, pretending to search around the house. Victoria seemed momentarily at a loss for words, but then she immediately started shouting angrily at me.
They went to a friend's house. What's wrong with that?
Stop lying. Were you not worried when a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old were gone all night? Are you even a mother?
Huh? How do you know about that?
They walked all the way to our house late at night. As I told this to her, who looked puzzled and astonished, she shamelessly responded with a brazen attitude.
Our daughter isn't cute at all, and the son I raised lovingly rebels against me. I don't need those brats. You can take them, but give me money. I want $100,000. It's not much, right?
She truly was the worst kind of woman. I felt boiling anger at the thought that my son and grandchildren had suffered because of such a woman. Too bad. You can't spend money behind bars. I've recorded our entire conversation.
Huh. You're so naive. I'll be released soon enough just for being a little harsh with the children.
It's not just about the children. You do realize that taking someone's life is a serious crime, don't you? And there's evidence. Actually, there was Richard's diary in the bag, and from Victoria's frequent outings, he suspected she was having an affair. On top of that, there was a report from a detective Richard had hired for investigation. According to it, indeed, his wife was cheating with a young man she had met at a pub. The same man who fled from the house. Additionally, the diary also mentioned, "I've been feeling my life is in danger." It seems Richard had experienced several incidents where he narrowly avoided accidents, such as almost being hit by a car while walking or nearly being pushed onto train tracks while on a platform. He suspected his wife was targeting him, and he had taken precautions and was preparing for divorce.
That might prove my affair, but it doesn't prove I killed Richard. It's just the ramblings of old people. The police have more important things to do.
Can you still say that after hearing this?
As I argued with Victoria, my husband appeared holding a surveillance camera he had found. The day before Richard passed away, he had installed a surveillance camera in the living room, as noted in his diary. Upon playing the recording, there was a conversation between his wife and the young man.
"It went well this time. I pushed your husband hard down the stairs."
Thank you. Now we'll get a hefty life insurance payout.
Victoria turned pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably.
I just said that as a joke.
How far can you go with your lies? I'll bring all the evidence to the police and request a reinvestigation. Your affair partner might spill everything about you during questioning.
But...
Oh, by the way, Laura mentioned something like this. The place where Richard fell is a busy pedestrian bridge, and many cars nowadays have cameras installed. Laura suggested spreading the word on social media to see if there were any witnesses at that time. Victoria's eyes widened, and she looked visibly shaken, placing a hand over her mouth. However, she quickly changed her tone and began to apologize.
I'm sorry. I was threatened by that man. I'll give you half of the $100,000 life insurance payout if you overlook this.
Excuse me? You're not the beneficiary.
That can't be true. We made each other beneficiaries when we got married.
I told her that according to Richard's diary, the beneficiary had been changed from her to Daniel already. Richard had set up a trust system that allowed his children to receive the benefits once they reached a certain age, regardless of their current age.
That's ridiculous. It was a plan to get a large sum of money.
She collapsed on the spot, crying and screaming like a child, utterly miserable. We watched her coldly in silence. Afterward, both were arrested. Taking someone's life is a serious crime, and they are unlikely to be free for a long time. Even if they were to leave prison, no one would want anything to do with them. Currently, my grandchildren live with me. In fact, my daughter and her husband also live with us, supporting us, and they lovingly care for the two children as if they were their own. Emily, who used to be quiet, has started to open up and gradually began to talk more. I am determined to stay strong and see these children's happiness through until the end.